what's going on, guys? Thanks for joining me. Gonna go through my collection a little bit more, working my way through the D's. We're gonna be listening to From the Ancient Ruins by Cythereal. I didn't know about this release until just a couple of years ago. Big fan of the first two Cythereal albums. That was it. Turns out they released this a couple years ago. There's 3 previously unreleased tracks that were recorded between Nord and the other one. And then there's the 2 demos, A Hail of the Faceless Angels. Or wait, no, just 1 demo. So there's 9 tracks on this. Great shit. Super happy to have some what I thought was Cythereal material that you couldn't have. Anyways, we are into the D's. DR. Now, I did review this release maybe 2 or 3 months ago when I got it in, but it is worth visiting once more. This is Drudkh with Throne of the Depths. Amazing German band with only 1 full length. This came out in 2007, but these guys are still active, I guess, and were active as early as 1996, I want to say. If you're interested in anything that's an Emperor knockoff, this is totally right where it's at. It's got that fucking mighty sound that Anthems to the Welcome at Dusk has. But I would say where Emperor's Anthems to the Welcome at Dusk is highly symphonic and has a lot of keyboards and orchestration going on, this is really more subdued. It's more riff-based. But where it is similar to Emperor is the fucking vocals are just goddamn mighty, and the drums are just fucking thundering like they are by Trim on Anthem. So this is a great release. Not enough people talk about or aware of this band. And lastly, you can still, I just checked, pick this up from Seasons of Mist US for $2.25. So if there's anything you're thinking about ordering from Seasons of Mist, check out their clearance bin or whatever. There's a bunch of cheap-ass goodies in there, and this is totally worth getting. Alright, so next we've got an unpronounceable band name. What you need to know, I guess, is that it is Wizard backwards. So, Drezu, something like that, with Geheim Gang. So this is a friend of mine. He lives not too far from here, and I got this guy into black metal, I guess. He was a metalhead back in the 90s, but I think kind of, I don't know, maybe heard, Slayer, Metallica, Megadeth, and was like, alright, that's good, but was kind of into like punk, rock kind of stuff, and played in a bunch of bands with friends of mine here and there, but we got to talking online maybe 6 or 8 years ago, and I just started sharing black metal with him, and he just went all in with that shit, and he started recording his own stuff like right away. He took to it right away, and he fucking nailed it and was able to write arguably generic black metal instantly. He did computer drums, he was a guitar player already, and he's just always been a kind of guy who loves recording music. He can't stop recording music. So within the first couple of years of just getting into black metal, and us kind of, trading albums back and forth and whatnot, he had several projects released on several different labels. He didn't have to put any of his own money into it. He would just trade copies of these for this or that. And Depressive Illusion is one of the labels he works with. Darker Than Black is another one that he works with. But yeah, I would say he's got the finished black metal sound down. The riffs just aren't that great or notorious, I guess, in all his stuff. He's a little bit more, I think, production over quality, if I'm being honest. But this is pretty good. It's just generic drum machine, kind of Finnish inspired black metal. It's all right. One of his projects that he did called Skoger, I did kind of like, but yeah, I haven't talked to him for a long time, and hope to keep it that way. Anyways, next we've got Dreadful Shadows. I didn't really know much about this band. I just happened upon this copy of this album, Buried Again, not too long ago, but they're like a gothic rock band from Germany, and this came out in '96. And they had a song, track 2 on here, Chains, was on the Death Is Just the Beginning 4 compilation. And I always really liked that song. When I was first getting into metal in like 97, 98, that Death Is Just the Beginning compilation, 3 and 4, those were pretty cool. That was an entryway for me to get into a lot of different bands. But I don't know, this is kind of maybe like Fields of the Nephilim, kind of, but maybe a little bit more rock based or whatnot. It's okay. It's kind of a little too goth for my own comfort. But here's a band I can never speak highly enough about. So this is Drive Like Jehu, and I last talked about these on my channel maybe a year or two ago when I did like non-metal bands that I was into, and this is one of my absolute favorite non-metal bands. I want to compare them to other bands that you might know about, but I kind of think that would do them a disservice in definition. I want to say these guys went on to do Rocket from the Crypt. They did 2 albums. This is the latter one from 1994, and the first one I just ordered on Discogs for $6, in case you're wondering. I believe it came out in '92, and that would make this band sound a little bit more dated than they really are, I think. They've got... I don't listen to Zao, but I feel like a lot of people speak of Zao like they can't imagine a band containing more energy in a live performance or on an album than Zao can. And for me, when I hear people talk about Zao, I've heard the band. They just don't do anything for me. They're fucking Christians, so I don't listen to them. I think this might be up someone's alley if Zao is a band that they speak highly about. But it's not really like that at all. It's indie rock with these angular sort of riffs, incredible, just screaming fucking vocals. These guys just have so much more power than just a rock and roll band really should. Their fucking songwriting is watertight. You want to talk about hooks? These aren't just hooks in songwriting. It's like sledgehammers to the side of your fucking face. When I put this on in a car, I just go fucking ape shit, pounding the steering wheel, bouncing up and down in my seat. These songs are so good, memorable. I play air drums along with them. It's just so fucking good. You just can't possibly consume it enough when you're listening to it. Both of their albums are fan-fucking-tastic. You might be familiar with the post Drive Like Jehu band Hot Snakes, which is kind of reminiscent of it, but it's just nowhere near as good. There's nothing like Drive Like Jehu. You could compare them to like Shellac or Big Black or something like that, but they're a lot more modern. They're very 90s, but man, I just fucking love that band to death. It's just, all the other bands that would kind of be around that kind of thing, I'm not really into, I guess. Early at the Drive-In, I do kind of like, and that's kind of along those lines, but still not even nowhere near as close to as energetic and just explosive as Yank Crime is. Their first album is self-titled. Look up Drive Like Jehu. I think if that sounds at all interesting to you, you'll probably love it. So next we've got Drogaeta. This is, I think, self-titled, and it's a compilation of their first 2 demos. I found this in a used bin or something. I'm not sure where I got this, but it came out on Wild Rags, and that's why I have it. This isn't very good. They're like a death grind band from Ohio, and the crutch here is kind of that they use a drum machine. I actually have that Blood Feast shirt. I just noticed. The print on that Blood Feast shirt has worn off so fucking much. You can barely even read the front of it. And the back of it used to say, "Drink the blood of every corpse." And that has nothing to do with Drogaeta. I think Drogaeta are still around. I used to see the guy, one of these guys used to be on the Relapse forum a lot. But it's just kind of generic. Doesn't really do a whole lot for me. We got a lot more to get through, so I'm kind of trying to be brief about these. So this band is called Drona, and I watched these guys open for Obsequii in Minneapolis a couple of years ago, and they were great. This is called Depraved Ceremonies. They may have only pressed this for that show. It seems like a band where they wrote some great songs and they just didn't quite put enough effort into, you know, keeping the band going. This is a CDR demo, because I can't find evidence online of this physical copy existing anywhere. Just a 3-song little EP. I've listened to it a few times. It's really great. I'd like to see them do a full length, of course, but it seemed like the kind of band where maybe they're doing a couple other projects and they just didn't really have the wherewithal to follow through with making this band have more material and be well known. So next we've got Dropdead, discography. I don't know if the band kept recording after 1993. This is discography 91 to 93. And this has got a lot of songs on it. Dropdead are a pretty infamous Boston, I think, hardcore punk band. And anybody that knows Dropdead, I think, is pretty much head over heels for Dropdead. This isn't really my kind of thing all that often, but Dropdead just nail this style to the fucking wall. Tons of fucking energy, just shit that makes you want to punch the sky or whatever is nearby. I don't really know much about this band or what, you know, how many releases make up this thing, but back when I was into grindcore, this was just kind of like a peripheral sort of release style-wise for me. And it really scratches an itch every once in a while when you just want something that's just really pissed off, monochromatic, and just filthy as shit. I would love to see these guys live sometime, if ever given the chance. I don't know. Are these guys still active or not? Another Boston label, Armageddon, which is a record store I'd love to visit someday, released that. So this is Drowned with Idola Specious. This full length, the only full length this band ever put out, was put out on Sepulchral Voice Productions. I'm going to say 2014, maybe 15. And I did do a full review of this album maybe 3 or 4 months ago. But I will not stop being evangelical about this thing. The artwork's a little, and that doesn't really interest me, but man, it is a fucking great band. They were around back in the 90s and recorded some really, really good demos, which I have on vinyl. Viscera Terre is the name of that one. Not a whole lot of artwork in here to look at, really, but this stuff is just super good. If you're into, like, Necros Christos, I think they share a member with Necros Christos. Veil of Siddim is kind of another one that comes to mind, or, like, Hate Spawn. A lot of that kind of, like, German death metal that's kind of modern, but not as modern as a lot of those, like, Dark Descent or those kind of bands. Really good stuff. Kind of rooted in the 90s, but sounds kind of modern. But you know, a lot of death metal that comes out these days that's just good. It sounds guttural, it scratches an itch, but Idola Specious has memorable riffs where you know that part's coming up because you know this part, and it's just really well written and just really well thought out. Next, we've got a band that everyone loves way more than me. Drowning the Goddamn Light. I've tried to get into this band. I've listened to a couple of their releases. They definitely suffer from having way too many releases. I would say they suffer from having way too many releases, but you guys buy all their shit, so they're not suffering in the least. But you all know these guys are from Australia. This is an alignment of Dead Stars, and most people have said, if you don't like Alignment of Dead Stars, you don't like Drowning the Light. And I guess that's where it happens for me. You know, I'm way into a side project these guys, or one of these guys did called Eternum. Actually, they only really have one good album, The Devouring Descent. But yeah, I want to like this band, but it just sounds so generic and boring, and I have a hard time respecting a band that puts out 35 releases a year and they all sound the same and are boring. Next, so we're landing on a band that I don't know, I kind of have a love-hate relationship with this band. They do kind of have too many releases, and I don't know what order they're in. I've been a fan of these guys since day one. A fan. I can never remember which ones are which, because every time they reissue one of their records, it has a different cover on it. So I have Autumn Aurora on vinyl, and I love that record to death. This is Drudkh, and Forgotten Legends is also really good. So these are both put out, I think, by Supernal Music. I don't know why they fucking redid everything and put no words on them and no song titles. Whatever. So I've just kind of picked up a couple other of their releases throughout the years. Swan Road is one that I don't really listen to very often. And Blood in Our Wells, this is just kind of more mid-era stuff. I haven't played either of these two in probably 15 years. So then I just kind of gave up on them. And a couple of years ago, they put out this Eastern Frontier in Flames, which is a collection of, I think, 3 EPs, Anti-Urban, Slavonic Chronicles, and Thousands of Moons Ago. One of them, I think, is a split. So a lot of this stuff is kind of old, but I do really like the way this release plays kind of as an album. This is some more slower paced kind of stuff, really stripped down, minimalistic, and I don't really like the newer, more modern Drudkh kind of style. It's okay. So I do like that release quite a bit, Eastern Frontier and Flames. And then this is a newer album by them, A Furrow Cut Short, and it's okay. I just kind of feel like if these guys would just slow down with the output and focus on writing just a really, really great record like Autumn Aurora was, I wouldn't be surprised if they could pull it off again. I think they have it in them to do it, but I don't know. I've got Autumn Aurora, and that's kind of all you really need, I think, from Drudkh, if I'm being honest. So that's it for now. We are getting through the D's. We'll see you next time. Thanks for joining me.